Good morning, and welcome to this ITIF webinar on how 5G technology can enable greater climate and energy innovation. I'm particularly excited for today's panel discussion, and I want to encourage folks before we get started to drop questions in the Slido app using the hashtag 5G and climate tech throughout, and we'll get a chance to ask those to our panelists during the Q&A. My name is Stefan Koster. I'm a senior policy analyst here at the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation. And while I typically focus on climate, energy trade, and next generation technologies in the hard to abate sectors, today we'll be discussing the vital role that 5G wireless technology can play in supporting a whole host of new innovative applications from smart cities, autonomous vehicles, enhanced weather prediction, in situ environmental quality monitoring, smart grids, and infrastructure that all save money and emissions. Much of the material that you'll see from this slide deck has been graciously borrowed from CTIA, the Wireless Communications Industry Trade Associations, their recent report that was done in conjunction with Accenture Consulting. I recommend checking out that report in full as it provides a rich context and drills down into the numbers. I'll go ahead and give a short PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll turn it over to our wonderful panelists. So just a little bit about ITIF there. We're an independent, nonpartisan research think tank based here in Washington, D.C., and we focus on IT, innovation and competitiveness, climate tech and trade, alongside concerns around the next generation of technologies critical to addressing the U.S. and global issues and concerns. So I want to start just by noting the huge carbon emissions potential that 5G-enabled technology can potentially achieve. CTIA's report, which I noted earlier, notes that up to 330 million metric tons in the United States, equivalent to about 8% of total U.S. emissions, or about 20% of the U.S.'s 2030 emissions target, could be achieved through the technologies enabled by a fully built-out 5G network. These potential emissions reductions are clustered into 5 categories: transportation and smart cities, manufacturing and connected devices, energy efficiency buildings and smart grids, agriculture, and finally, improved work from home healthcare access. For transportations and smart cities, the future will be written clearly with 5G technologies. Think of autonomous cars and buses operating in dense urban environments. Where vehicle-to-vehicle and vehicle-to-urban environment communication is critical, 5G will be a necessary tool to support that. For electric vehicles, smart charging, and where voltage and demand can be finely controlled to avoid the most polluting parts of the day, 5G will also be a vital tool. Drones, for example, both sidewalk delivery ones and short last mile delivery drones will also rely on 5G. Think of all those idling delivery vans outfitted with smart time of day monitoring to avoid the busiest parts of cities and streets. Smart parking spaces will alert your vehicle as you circle the block, letting you know a space has opened up. For manufacturing, the 5G applications are also vast. Predictive maintenance reduces machine downtime, potentially alleviating supply chain crunches. Device-to-device communication will also allow for more integrated facilities and warehouses, reducing the need for redundant trips, half-filled trucks, and inefficient processing and delivery systems. The area I am personally most excited about is in the smart grid and energy efficiency space, alongside smart buildings and smart city applications. With 5G technology, we could have buildings speaking to buildings in order to provide low shifting and battery-powered backup. These buildings could potentially respond proactively to demand response signals and even have room-by-room or office-by-office integration, where they work toward improving overall savings and increasing reliability. Additionally, increased cybersecurity concerns with more interconnected devices will require adaptive and resilient systems able to detect potential cyber attacks. In agriculture and environmental monitoring, we're going to see, and already seeing actually, exciting technology applications for 5G-enabled in situ monitoring for precision farming that helps reduce fertilizer and water use while improving weed and pest management. And finally, as we all know, given the last 2 years of COVID work from home, the vital reliability of 5G and internet access for things like telehealth, work from home, they foster faster connectivity and improved access. And this will have clearer emissions impacts as we transition to more of a hybrid work environment. I know that was a sort of a whirlwind through the potential applications of 5G technology that have the potential to save energy. I just want to give a brief note of kind of what 5G is. I know some of our panelists will be able to speak more fully to that. But briefly, 5G is the 5th generation of cellular technology that will allow for wireless broadband connections to travel at much higher speeds with greater capacity. Unlike previous LTE technology, which requires large cell towers that we ubiquitously see in urban environments, 5G relies on smaller cell sites that can be located on buildings, lampposts, or even at the street level. This mesh network allows 5G to travel faster, but is also subject to potentially greater interference from buildings or poor weather. With an increase web of 5G cell sites, particularly in dense urban environments, technologies will be able to tap into the far greater networks with less energy requirements more seamlessly than previous cellular technology. 5G networks will also allow for more accurate location tracking and real-time device analytics beyond just smartphones or tablets. Think of all the devices that could be potentially turned into smart devices. This is a graphic that I found quite helpful from the CTIA's report. And so we see with this increase in wireless coverage, the increase in speed, as well as lower latency, alongside greater 5G device use, we'll be able to unlock a whole range of yet to be commercialized innovative technologies that could help us reduce emissions through more efficient transportation and delivery systems, for example, supply chains, and smarter grids. Here's just a sort of, again, it speaks to the fact that now instead of one-way or two-way device communication, we'll have devices that can speak to themselves, that can speak to each other, and can speak with the broader network. And finally, I just want to end about the fact that kind of where we are and where we're going, and I hope we get into this discussion. I know we will with the panel. So there's been significant rollout of 5G coverage across the United States over the last couple of years. And we'll hear from some of those companies that are responsible for that in a few moments. There has been also significant funding for both smart grid infrastructure, enhanced EV charging, and increased investments in a national broadband deployment as a result of the November bipartisan infrastructure bill. We're starting to see some of that money to roll out the door with recent announcements across around the development of a national EV charging network, spending for increased broadband, particularly outside these dense urban environments, and significant investment in an upgraded electric grid transmission system, capable of potentially responding to sharp reductions or contractions in supply and demand and signals from resources, allowing for an increased deployment of clean energy, EVs, and demand response. There are remaining policy needs, I want to note, that needs to ensure adequate spectrum is available and to support increasing demand throughout the US, and the need to facilitate the use of existing rights-of-way and pole access. I think at the municipal level, developing strategies around so-called dig once policies can help smooth the transition to increase 5G access without needlessly disrupting quality of life. And finally, and most importantly, I think with the development of 5G and even more next generation, including 6G, which we're already starting to see, there's a need to ensure that these new technologies and companies have the ability to compete and innovate in this 5G-enabled future. So I know that was sort of a quick run through of all these technologies and the potential applications. And now I want to turn it over to Joe Kane, the Director of Broadband and Spectrum Policy here at ITIF.
Thanks, Stefan. Yeah, my name is Joe Kane, and for a lot of people, all that 5G stuff really translates to that thing from the Super Bowl commercials, maybe, or it's the thing that will make your phone go a little faster. But as I work on broadband and spectrum, people are always asking, what's 5G actually going to do? And I think Stefan's explanation there really showed us it's a lot of things. It's all these technologies that are cross-cutting across different industries that are going to allow us to carry a lot more data and be more energy efficient with it. But I understand that people often want more specifics, and on one level I sympathize with that, but on the other level I think, well, let's think about 4G. There wasn't even such a thing as the App Store, and no one envisaged that there would be all these entire industries that grow up because of 4G. Ride sharing and streaming music and videos and food delivery probably weren't what people had in mind when 4G was taking off. And so likewise with 5G, I think the really important use cases are probably ones that we haven't thought of yet. But that's why today's event is exciting, because we have for you the people who have thought about it and are actually using 5G to make important differences in the world. So let's get right to it. Throughout the event, we'll be taking questions, so submit those using the Slido link on the event page, and you can use the hashtag 5G and climate tech to find the right place to put your questions. All of our speakers have longer bios on the website, so I'll just give a little headline for each one, starting with Grace Coe. Grace is the head of office and vice president of government affairs for North America at Nokia. Before coming to Nokia, she served as the U.S. ambassador to the Radio Communication Conference, the World Radio Communications Conference, and she has also served as the special assistant to the president for technology and telecom and cybersecurity policy. Grace was previously also the deputy chief counsel for the House Energy and Commerce Committee's subcommittee on communications and technology. So over to you, Grace.
Thanks, Joe. I really appreciate it. And believe me, World Radio Communication Conference is a mouthful, so I stumble over that constantly. Okay, I am going to get started with the slides. So thanks, everyone, and thanks for chatting with us on 5G and climate change. This is a topic that it's just become such a critical issue at every level of society. At Nokia, we've made it our purpose to address the problem. It's penetrated to the CEO level. This is one of Pekka Lundmark's most important initiatives and most important priorities. We're creating technology that helps the world act together, and we think that our industry, particularly through the adoption of 5G, can help with restoring productivity growth by bringing digital to the physical industries that it hasn't reached yet, providing more access globally to work, healthcare, and education, as we saw throughout the pandemic. And obviously, in line with the theme of this event, we want to use technology, and we think technology can really make a difference in responding to climate change through more efficient use and reuse of the world's resources. So at Nokia, we have this two-pronged approach. First of all, I think very much in line with what Daniel Kester was saying, we believe that the positive impact of our technology and on all other industries is probably the most significant contribution we can make to this fight against climate change. GSMA industry research points out that mobile communications industry can enable other industries in society to reduce their emissions by up to 10x more than the mobile industry's own footprint. That being said, we can't be complacent about our own footprint. That's the impact from our own operations and the use of our products and solutions. And so we're looking to minimize our impact, Nokia's impact on the carbon footprint of the world. And we have set clear targets to minimize our emissions across our value chain. We were the first vendor to set a science-based target, revised in 2021, which targeted a 50% reduction in scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions by 2030. And we are constantly looking for ways that our own operations can be more efficient and circular. And we've joined the RE100 and set ourselves the target to use 100% renewable electricity in our own operations by 2025 and to be 95% circular by 2030. The greatest part of our carbon footprint, 93% of our emissions in 2021, comes when our customers use our products in their networks. And we're continually aiming to improve the energy efficiency of our products and to introduce new products that help decouple the growth in capacity from growth in electricity usage. So we've developed a range of chipsets that are 50 to 60% more energy efficient than previous versions. We've pioneered new liquid cooling systems for energy-intensive base stations and introduced software like AVA energy efficiency services, which apply AI to further reduce energy usage in 5G and multi-vendor legacy networks by up to 20%. And with fixed access technologies that bring broadband to home and businesses, we've reduced power consumption by 38% since 2007, while speeds have increased 64 times. At the same time, we're working closely with our suppliers on reducing emissions in manufacturing, logistics, and transportation. We encourage innovation in other sectors through our collaboration on carbon neutral air freight using sustainable aviation fuel in parts of our logistics. But we take all of our operational efficiency seriously. We don't want to limit our thinking only to what we do in our operations. We have a saying here at Nokia: there's no green without digital. And this reflects the unique benefits of enhanced connectivity and digitalization in this fight against climate change. It allows cities, industry, and society to be safer and more sustainable. We estimate that only around 30% of the world's economy is digitalized. That means 70% is still more wasteful and less productive than it could be. The Accenture study that Dan was referencing shows that US 5G wireless networks will be instrumental in tackling climate change. And more specifically, 5G-enabled use cases will make a 20% contribution towards carbon emission reduction targets by 2025. There you go. So I wanted to share with you about 4 examples that illustrate the critical role of connectivity and digitalization to drive sustainable transformation in industries like agriculture and manufacturing, in smart cities, and environmental monitoring. So in agriculture, the world already produces enough food to feed the current population, but overproduction, overconsumption, and supply chain issues leads to huge amounts of waste. And according to estimates, 30 to 40% of the world's food is lost or wasted during production, making it up about 8 to 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions. We've been working with partners in precision farming solutions. Precision and vertical farming is the use of 5G, wireless remote monitoring, private networks, digital sensors, and AI-based analytics to minimize pesticide, fertilizer, water, and energy use, while also maximizing crop yields. Whether it's urban vertical farms in the US or agricultural fields in India, digitalization brings environmental and productivity benefits. I was just actually at Bell Labs yesterday watching their drone training facility. It was so fascinating. Bell Labs Consulting estimates that if 50 to 25% of all farms adopted precision farming by 2030, it would lead to an increase in yields by as much as 300 million tons each year, and a reduction in farming costs of up to 100 billion annually, and reduced water use by up to 150 billion cubic meters annually. If we think about decarbonizing the manufacturing industry, which is responsible for about 16 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions in a year, and around a third of the total global carbon dioxide emissions. This, we've got to think if over the next 10 years, if the manufacturing industry reduces its greenhouse gas emissions by half, it could conceivably actually reach net zero by 2050. So how do we do that? In a study commissioned by Nokia late last year, it was projected that the conversion to smart manufacturing could contribute to 10 to 20% carbon dioxide reduction by 2030, while improving productivity, operational efficiency, and providing other environmental benefits. So we're working with our customers to help enterprises design, implement, and manage private networks that use CBRS spectrum, network slicing to increase or other high-performance networks to support new applications like remote configuration and control, predictable uptime, and video as a sensor. We've invested in smart manufacturing in our own factory in Oulu, Finland. This is a place where digitalization, automation, and other smart solutions have helped improve sustainability while increasing productivity by up to 30% on a very practical level, and reducing time to market by 50%. We've seen a reduction in product defects by 50% over the past 4 years. And we can't not talk about, I think I'm missing my smart city slide, but we can't not talk about smart cities. Pervasive mobile and fixed broadband can connect systems, assets, people, and IoT devices at city scale to drive greener and safer communities, which emphasize inclusion and access to services and opportunity for all. So the use cases are pretty broad. We need to see more scale in the deployment. Examples like transportation and logistics management, which drive traffic efficiency on roads and in ports, can decrease congestion and reduce emissions. Smart sensors will allow for real-time situational awareness, which improves resource use writ large. And the huge societal benefits that relate to digital inclusion that provide access to employment, healthcare, and education services can also be enabled by 5G. Well, Dan mentioned the IIJA funds, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. There is a huge opportunity, not just in the funds for broadband to bring to close the digital divide, but there's a huge opportunity in, say, the 288 available for transportation to make transportation smarter and to make it more efficient and ultimately more sustainable. It's not a matter of looking at these examples one by one, department by department, but really understanding that connectivity, once it's present, provides the foundation to enable each of these use cases in infrastructure. On a collective basis, can really bring down the energy use and improve resource management. Sorry, I was missing that slide, but much of what we discussed so far concentrates the reduction of emissions to mitigate climate change. But here on this slide, we can talk a little bit about environmental monitoring and the increases in disasters that are occurring because of the existing changes to climate. There are multiple use cases that Nokia is helping with to validate, to look at how we can monitor for natural disasters, using direct cloud connectivity via cellular IoT to monitor these outdoor environmental conditions and provide customizable cloud analytics and intuitive user interfaces. This is not academic. This has real economic and social impacts. And I'm just about finished. Sorry about that. We're in a race against climate change. And these are some of the next steps that we need to do in order to be able to win that race. We have to accelerate the digitalization of industry and society. We have to take those steps in order to be able to get the data that we need in order to run the analytics that we need in order to be able to know, predict, and manage those resources. Second, nobody can do this on their own. No country, industry, company can do this on its own. We need to collaborate globally across all sectors in order to be able to get to this solution. Nokia is actively involved in multiple foundations and associations in trying to bring together the right stakeholders to help push this across. And of course, third, we need to make sure that we keep spectrum available for all of these applications. This is not a situation in which we can afford to allow the pipeline to slow, but we need to continue to make spectrum available for the multiple different instances in which these sensors are all going to run across the network and provide that data. I'm going to stop here and I'll leave you with this quote, but this is the way Nokia is thinking about sustainability, and we're hoping to be contributors in solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We're now going to move on to Borhan Yassin, who is the CEO of Rainforest Connection, which builds and deploys scalable open acoustic monitoring systems that can halt illegal logging and poaching and enable biodiversity measurement. Borhan previously led tech companies in both the US and Dubai before moving to the conservation industry. Over to you, Borhan.
Yes, Joe, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here and talk to you a little bit about my organization and some of the solutions that we deploy on the ground to help and stop climate change. Let me see how I can. Okay, great. So Rainforest Connection, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a remote team that is from all over the world. We primarily focus on creating technology that we can deploy on the ground, working with partners on the ground that can monitor biodiversity, can also help illegal activities such as deforestation or poaching. I want to tell you a little bit about that and how are we doing that today and how we can do it even better with the power of 5G. So the mission of our mission, we primarily focus on using sound acoustics to evaluate the environment and monitor ecosystems. Sound is one of the most profound ways to understand what's going on in a forest. We can hear things from 1 to 2 kilometers away. We're able to detect very specific acoustic signatures using the power of AI and machine learning. And with connectivity, we're able to use the power of cloud to analyze this data in real time. So our mission at Rainforest Connection is harnessing that power of sound to create technology so it can help us accelerate the protection and preservation of ecosystems. Now, one of the ways that we do that is with a solution that we've developed for threat detection. To give you a bit of sort of an overview of deforestation, for example. Deforestation accounts to almost 20% of the global greenhouse gas emission. Now, if you compare that to almost 1/5 of the global greenhouse gas emission, road transportation accounts to 15%. All of road transportation accounts to 15% of the global greenhouse gas emission. So deforestation accounts to more greenhouse gas emission than all of the cars, all of the trucks on the road combined. And in places like Brazil and Indonesia, 70 to 80% of the total global greenhouse gas emission for these countries come by way of deforestation. And according to a study by Interpol, 50 to 90% of that deforestation comes by way of illegal logging. Now, there's multiple ways of being able to detect logging activities or illegal logging. You can do it by satellite, you can do it by patrols on the ground, you can do it perhaps by drone, but none of these technologies can scale to a level where you're able to detect these activities in real time and do it in a cheaper way. Now, using sound, we've developed this device we call the Guardian. You see it on the left-hand side of the screen there. You can also see it blending in very well with a Secorpia tree on the bottom right of the screen. And this device basically operates as a connectivity and a power hub. The Guardian device right now is outfitted with a high sensitivity microphone, and it's able to pick up all the sounds from the forest or from other ecosystems. It can pick up sounds from, as I mentioned earlier, from 1 to 1.5 kilometers away. And that sound is transmitted to the cloud. At the moment, we're using 3G, 4G to transmit that sound to the cloud. But we're able to take a 24/7 live stream recording of all the sounds that are occurring in the forest. Once that sound is uploaded to the cloud, we use machine learning and AI. We develop these convolutional neural networks, these models that are able to detect very specific sound signatures. For example, a good way to indicate logging activity is being able to detect for chainsaw sounds. A good way to detect poaching is being able to detect for gunshot sounds and so forth. So being able to do that in real time allows us to automatically alert people on the ground, send them real-time alerts, letting them know that there's logging activity that are occurring at the moment. So it's one of the sort of first real-time solutions to being able to detect illegal logging and poaching in forests around the world. Now, this technology is currently as was mentioned earlier, this is not research. This is actual applications on the ground. We have this technology deployed in over 22 countries around the world. Lots of partners on the ground and lots of local communities, indigenous tribes, and so on, making use of this technology. Now, along with doing that, as you can imagine, we're recording the entire soundscape of the forest. Now, in addition to being able to detect for illegal activities, we're also recording the entire soundscape. So the species that inhabit these forests are just as important to protect as the forest itself. So along with doing that, we've been capturing all of the vocalizations, all of the species that are in these forests that we're trying to protect. And this is an example that I wanted to bring up of just a 60-second audio file. And in that file, you can see all the species that can be detected using machine learning and AI. And the reason why this is important is because as our world is changing in front of us, as climate change is happening and the world is changing, this is really one of the snapshot that we would take of the soundscape at the moment. We're probably never going to see that again. right? The world is shifting all the time. The soundscape of the forests are changing. Ecosystems are changing all the time. Being able to capture that sound, being able to take a accounting of all of the species that are available at this moment in time and doing it over a long-term period really enables researchers and scientists and conservationists to be able to, figure out solutions in creative and innovative way to combat climate change. And we think this is a very important mission as well, not only to, in a brute force way, stop illegal activities to halt the destruction of forests, but being able to take an accounting and take a snapshot of Earth, at this point in time, and doing it over the course, over the course of time, I think gives us a very good opportunity to be able to understand what's going on and hopefully do some mitigative actions. And what are we doing for that? We're creating the world's largest collaborative species accounting. We have a platform, an open platform that we've developed that at the moment has over 73 million recordings that were collected from 36 countries around the world. And this is, using 5G. Imagine our ability to do this at a much, much bigger scale, being able to deploy these sensors right now that can not just operate as a mechanism to transmit audio, but it can also operate as a mechanism to transmit video and images and all sorts of amazing sensors out there that gives us a much better picture of what's going on in ecosystems. And doing that and putting that information, combining it with the power of AI and machine learning that allows us to detect individual species like what we've shown before, will really benefit science and research in a way that we've probably haven't even imagined yet. And what that does, the repercussions of that to conservation, I think will be amazing. The amount of breakthrough solutions that will happen as a result of being able to explore such a vast database of audio, video, and images, will give us all these solutions that we need to hopefully be able to reduce the destruction that are currently happening to our world. And we'd hope that by being able to integrate technology such as 5G, we can accelerate that process, be able to transmit much higher quality audio, much higher quality video at much faster pace, obviously, and hopefully achieve this mission sooner than we anticipated. Thank you so much for your time, and happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, I think we're gonna save questions to the end, but yeah, keep bringing your questions in, and we will pass those along. We're now going to move to Palak Agrawal, who serves as a data scientist at US Ignite, where she focuses on getting insights from data to help with policy making. Her work includes using different IoT data sources to create models that help stakeholders with their planning and decision making. Prior to US Ignite, Palak worked as an architect in India designing for underserved communities. Her research has also sought to understand the climate and global dynamics between the global north and south. So over to you, Palak.
Thank you, Joe. Glad to be here. It's nice to meet everyone. Joe's already explained about me. So I work for US Ignite. A little background about US Ignite. Main mission is to foster smart community development by accelerating the creation of innovative, advanced networking-enabled applications and services. How we do this is by connecting different communities and different bases around the city to different funding. That could be NSF, EDA, NIST, only to name a few. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we believe in creating private and public partnerships which lead to better engagement and community development. This is just a map of the different communities that we are currently working with, and the ones that we plan to expand. We have different kinds of platforms within our organization, the biggest being the smart communities and the smart bases, where in smart communities we work with different communities across the US. At smart bases, we work with ERDIC or the Department of Defense directly in order to bring in 5G networks initially, and then use those networks in order to create and help, in lack of better words, to just make the bases more modern, make the processes more modern. How do we do this? Basically, we start with the process of requirement gathering within different cities, where we get into a city and ask them what they need. This can vary from things as small as air quality monitoring, such as getting a weather sensor in order to accurately get weather data out, or it could be setting up an entire EV charging system, getting a smart grid on place, getting smart street lighting, helping with transportation. How can we create more equity in the DOT department? How can we have intelligent shopping? Where how can we make like a city center within the city more safe? Different downtowns of different communities have come to us in order to talk about public safety, um, things like trash removal. So there's something where we are talking about how 5G network can actually help with everyday menial responsibilities and jobs that a city actually performs. What we do with this is we help them set these systems up within the city, and then we create data insights from that, which can be helped for decision making. And all of this is put into a package of different dashboards and visualization platforms that remain active over the years in order to help different using 5G, we've been able to create a integration platform where all of the data gets onto cloud. Everything is automated. We use AI and ML models in order to create these visualizations that update depending on the use case, every day, every hour, every 30 days. And what this actually does is that over time, you can actually see the difference that the data has in these processes, and see how they've been in the past versus what they would look like in the future. To expand on one of the use cases more specifically, we are currently working in Myanmar, which is near San Diego, at the Myanmar Corps Air Station. It's basically a Navy base where, as you would imagine, a lot of the Army enterprise is not as modern as they would like to be. They are just getting used to integrating with networks, which could be 5G, 4G, CBRS. There's a huge spectrum of different platforms that they are trying to integrate with. So one of our major projects at Myanmar includes basically energy communication, where they do have a lot of solar fields. They have backup generators, their PV inverters, which are somewhere out on the base, which isn't very accessible. You do need personnel to travel there, drive down, which is about a 30-minute drive, in order to have a check on them, integrate them, and normal issues of that sort. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to leverage 5G network. At the moment, they don't really have a 5G active 5G network, so we are using their 4G network in order to help connect these backup generators, PV inverters to the research microgrid. What this helps them do is that the first big advantage of this is remote statusing, which basically over the air, you're able to decide, okay, we need to get the backup generators in place. This is the amount of energy supply demand that we have, and we could just go in and decide these many backup generators need to be switched on. These do not need to be active at the moment. And other things is just control over DER, where we are talking about resiliency. How can we decide how much power supply and demand do we have, and how much do our PV inverters and solar grids actually create? Can we just have control over making which is clean energy in order to increase climate resiliency? The biggest questions on army bases is what happens if their grid is lost. They are really essential to the entire economy. Like in case there was some sort of attack or some sort of situation, they would be the first ones to be informed, and they need to plan on what happens if something happens to the energy grid. So they do have a lot of backup generators. So we are trying to see how we can subtract that out of the larger grid, create a microgrid for them, and use 5G network in order to activate and talk through it. While all of this is happening, there are a few things that form as challenges. Like mentioned, 5G network is up and coming. Within the army bases, it's not as prevalent as yet. The other big challenge is that most 5G networks are public in nature, while army enterprises cannot really talk over, communicate over public networks just because of uh, cybersecurity and confidentiality and information of that sort. So we've been working on the base in order to get a 5G standalone network, which would take maybe a couple of years to get in place, but at least that's the sort of aim that we're going towards in order to how can we integrate all the services that are required on a base using the 5G standalone network, and we can completely make it modern, a single dashboard enterprise that can be used. All of the projects that we're working on, like this is one, the other one is at Fort Carson, which is in Colorado Springs, where we are trying to integrate with a lot of weather sensors, radar sensors on street lights in order to help with traffic and weather monitoring. So all of these are pilot projects which we are hoping would become enterprise solutions after we prove the value of first installing a network and then using the network in order to make different decisions. Thank you. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Palak. And now, last but not least, we have John Hunter, who works on the government affairs team for T-Mobile, where he's responsible for the development and acquisition of electromagnetic spectrum, cybersecurity, and emerging technologies. He has previously worked at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, the Department of Defense, and the Drug Enforcement Administration, where he was an advisor on spectrum policy and strategic planning. He is also an 8-year veteran of the U.S. Army Signal Corps. So over to you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I thought before we get started, I wanted to touch a little bit on the network itself. I think, as many of you would agree, that this is a foundational topic, if you will, to the discussion we're having here today. So, to start, I would just say, going back, gosh, it's been about 3 years now where T-Mobile started its 5G journey. And to date, we have built the largest FDD-based low-band 5G network in the world. And we call this our extended range 5G, which now covers 315 million pops, which is about 95% of the US population, covering about 1.8 million square miles. In addition, we also have 225 million pops covered with our ultra capacity 5G. This is the 2.5 gigahertz band that was part of the merger with Sprint that we have been rapidly getting integrated and deployed into the network. We tripled our capacity in square miles in 2021 and plan to triple that again this year to 260 million pops by end of year, 300 million pops by the end of next. So this mid-band footprint is truly the transformative layer of 5G, delivering unprecedented wireless speeds and performance. In fact, 45% of our postpaid customers are using a 5G device, which is generating more than 50% of the total network traffic. So when you think about that, that's more than half of all network traffic on our expansive network is now coming from 5G devices. And I know we at T-Mobile certainly like to talk a lot about our 5G network. It's something that we're very proud of, being able to bring Sprint and T-Mobile together into the new T-Mobile. and really have brought this transformative network to consumers. But it's not just T-Mobile talking about it. 20 independent third-party benchmarking reports show T-Mobile #1 in 5G speed and availability. So what does all this mean for climate change and sustainability? And how do we incorporate that mindset into our operations? T-Mobile has made environmental sustainability a cornerstone of how it operates. In fact, we were the first U.S. operator to commit to being 100% powered by renewable electricity, and we're the first to announce science-based targets to that effect. Today, T-Mobile sources 100% of its electricity usage from clean, renewable sources. We hit that target at the end of 2021, which was 4 years ahead of schedule. This renewable energy commitment plays an important role in minimizing our carbon footprint and reducing our operational emissions. To help reach this renewable energy goal, part of our strategy included investing in 9 wind and solar power farms to account for every unit of electricity we consume. Through these projects, we put as much electricity into the grid as we take out. And our efforts are also being recognized by the Environmental Protection Agency. The EPA recognized T-Mobile as #3, just behind Microsoft and Google on the EPA's top 100 list of companies leading the way in their use of green power. With 5G, we are seeing increases in efficiency in our network, resulting in less energy consumption per petabyte of traffic on the network. 5G is also transforming industries that have historically been contributors to emissions, such as transportation, energy, manufacturing, agriculture, among others. Today, businesses of all sizes are building innovative new solutions aimed at creating a more connected and sustainable world. In transportation, 5G is solving real challenges by making driving more efficient and thereby reducing emissions. BMW recently announced America's first 5G connected car running on T-Mobile's 5G network. And then there's a startup in Las Vegas running on the 5G network there, working to reduce traffic congestion and to increase electric vehicle adoption. And for 5G to make a meaningful impact on transportation industry, you need a dense, ubiquitous 5G footprint. These aren't the solutions built for spotty millimeter wave coverage. In an effort to support a lot of these type of use cases going forward, you're going to need a network, what we like to call a layer cake approach, that has an amalgam of low, mid, and high band spectrum in an effort to achieve all these different goals. Put into context, for smart cities are part of the transportation solution, moving to more energy efficient infrastructure and transportation systems. In fact, in Peachtree Corner in Georgia, we have a 500-acre smart city powered by T-Mobile, where developers are building autonomous vehicles, industrial drones, smart city infrastructure like traffic signals that communicate directly with connected vehicles. This is where the powerful mid-band 5G network really shines, being able to blanket a city with the capacity and coverage needed to fully power 5G applications and services. In agriculture, farmers are using 5G to create more food using fewer resources, less fertilizer, as was previously discussed, less pesticides, and more importantly, a dying commodity out west, less water. And wildfire detection. A company in California is developing 5G solution using artificial intelligence to detect fires early to protect forests, people, and property. These are great examples of how our low-band extended range 5G network is powering new applications in previously unreached rural and remote locations. And I'll leave it there and turn it back to you.
Thank you, John. Okay, we now have some time for questions. I think we can bring some panelists back and see if they have any responses. We have one question here that I'll start with. Maybe Grace or Pollock, I think you had a take on this, which is, are there any opportunities on grants or universities or grants for universities that want to innovate in and advance climate health in the 5G space to be aware of?
Sure, I'm happy to start, Joe. Yes, absolutely. The government is a good source of grant funding. So when you're talking about 5G research, innovations in 5G, generally I think of, radio research or RF research, and I think AI for network management, et cetera. But if you're if you're thinking along those lines, certainly NIST and NSF have a lot of funding for specific advanced communications research. And I think that's one place to look. But if you're thinking about sustainability, or the specific use cases for 5G, because remember, 5G is a technology that can be used toward other things, you would want to look towards the specific department or agency that has that remit. So, for example, for sustainability, ARPA, for example, the DOE Advanced Research Projects Agency has awarded grants in the past on sustainability related to energy technologies.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Pollock, do you want to pass along what you put in the chat here?
It's the same. I was just mentioning the NSF and NIST funding that exists. At US Ignite, we also have a platform for advanced wireless research, which we are co-chairing with the university, with Northeastern University, that we do accept papers. It's towards the end of the power thing, but we are working with NSF to get further funding for another year of research. So you can definitely look out for that, and I can definitely connect you with the team if that's of interest.
I was going to go ahead and sort of ask a question to the group as well. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts. So obviously 5G, well-developed technology that's rolling out. We're seeing it in major cities and smaller cities, urban environments, and so forth, maybe even potentially in sort of in situ environmental, in situ situations like, rainforests or on farms and so forth. What are the sort of one or two greatest hurdles? And I'd love to hear each panelist's thoughts to really getting this technology to a level that it can then support the ecosystem that we saw develop out of 4G. That Joe mentioned, Uber and Lyft and DoorDash, and this whole sort of economy that was created as a result of the development and rollout of 4G. So what do you see as kind of either the opportunity to overcome or what needs to happen to really develop that, lay that field and that groundwork for this next generation of all these technologies and interests that we've seen?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. I think first and foremost, it's the network. It's the spectrum resources, right? I think when you look at the myriad of use cases, as you pointed out, not all use cases are the same. Some use cases are going to require, ultra capacity bandwidth. You may have in a smart warehouse, if you will. And then when you think about autonomous vehicles, I don't know that I'd want to have an autonomous vehicle operating on millimeter wave spectrum. I would need something like, a mid-band 2.5 gigahertz or even low band that gives you that reach and coverage. So I think as we look at 5G in general, and we think about all the use cases that have yet to materialize, I think we have to think about the network in general and how do we build a network that is foundational to support the technologies that are going to be coming forward in the years ahead.
Grace or Pollock? Thoughts?
Pollock, did you want to go, or it's up to you? Okay. Yeah, I think in addition to the network, yes, absolutely. The network has to underpin the innovation, but society also has to change, right? I mean, we're not comfortable getting into a driverless. Well, some of us are comfortable in getting into driverless cars. I desperately want to get into. I can't wait till I can just stop driving, quite frankly. But we have to. It's like the elevator on that front, right? Remember how the elevator? It's a common comparison. People didn't like the idea of getting into a box that lifted you up and down because it could break and send you plunging to your death. Well, I mean, people have to get used to the idea of figuring out how to use driverless cars. It's a societal difficulty as well. Certainly, we have to figure out how enterprises can become more digital to see the value in using the data that comes from the 5G IoT and sensors that are required. As policymakers, I think those folks have to figure out how we have a sensible data policy that allows us to use data for good, but also protects consumers and protects citizens at the same time. So there's a lot to figure out. I think there are some significant hurdles on a societal level as well.
I really like that idea of sort of starting potentially with use cases and applications that consumers might be more comfortable with, friendly towards, in the sense of, okay, maybe I think even just sort of developing acceptance around things like sidewalk drones is going to be kind of that first baby step toward broader, we're not just going to wake up one day and there's going to be autonomous vehicles, right? And I think both the technical challenges and the social challenges are going to require that we have these smaller, maybe not smaller, but sort of more targeted use case 5G applications, rather than these, this whole enmeshed smart. I dream of the smart city where everything is sort of fluid and there's no red lights and things are delivered by drones in the sense. But I worry, obviously, that's the reality is going to be kind of a much more stop and go, and there's going to be hurdles, both policy and technical, to overcome in that regard. I think so. I think that's a good point to make there.
Yeah. Just one more point on this is I just heard a Finnish researcher explain it takes 10 years to develop a G, more or less, right? But it takes society about 20 years to make full use out of it and to really bring it to business adoption, et cetera. It takes 20 years. I mean, we saw the real blossoming of 4G in the past, I think, in the aughts, really, right? When Uber and Lyft came into, maybe even later than that, sort of the early teens. So it's a matter of time as we figure out what the use cases are and they start to really penetrate.
Yeah, and I think there's also, Stefan, to your point, you brought up, where you talk about the mesh network and things of that nature. If you think about, I'm bringing this up from a business point of view because I think there's if you don't use the correct spectrum band, in many cases it can be cost prohibitive for a business to deploy. I can't tell you how many nodes you would need to cover a blanket of city in millimeter wave. It would just be cost prohibitive for an operator to do that. So I think when we look at these use cases and applications, we have to also right size those to what is achievable and what we can do from a business standpoint. So that's, as we're looking at it, that's why others they started their 5G journey on millimeter wave. We took a different approach. We decided, let's focus first on a coverage layer, and then let's build into the capacity and coverage with midband, and then ultimately work with millimeter wave for venues and stadiums, what have you. So I think at least from a business point of view, I think we have to look at it in that standpoint as well.
And I just wanted to, and maybe we can do kind of like a closing comments here. I wanted to note just to Grace's point too, is this idea of it takes time to develop the backbone technology, right, to support these, but it also takes time to then come up or develop the applicable use cases. In my research around this, I saw even talk now of 6G, right, and 6G already being in development, and this idea that there's always going to be humans as innovative as we are, and the IT and tech sector as innovative as they are, is already pushing the boundary there. So not to get too speculative, but sort of what future. I mean, we've kind of spent the last hour discussing these opportunities and so forth. But if everyone can just kind of go around and say, what's that future opportunity that you're really excited for, that you think either obviously enabled by this expanded 5G network, maybe even 6G and whatever that capability or process is going to bring. And I think, again, around the energy and environmental aspects, it's exciting because now we have the tools, or potentially the support network, to think about all these innovative technologies that can target specific emission sectors, transportation, delivery, and so forth. So if we could just quickly go around, maybe just some closing words or thoughts or anything there. We'll start with you, Pollock.
First one on the spot. So I think what I'm the most excited about, especially within the smart city realm, is to use it more for environmental purposes. I know we are doing, there's a lot of research out there which talks about how tree canopy growth or air quality decreases deaths in African Americans. So there's a lot of equality that can be achieved within different neighborhoods and different cities as a result of 5G network. And I'm excited to see that space grow.
Grace?
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned 6G, so I'm going to have to say a little bit more about that. It's 5G is the beginning of connecting things, right? And 6G is going to accelerate that, amplify that in a huge way. So it's going to be less about the consumer network and much more about the connecting to the digitizing things so that we can manipulate, control, understand the data better. And that's going to go onto steroids at that point. So 5G introduces the concept, 6G takes it infinitely further. So we're going into sensing, for example. We're going to be using spectrum to sense, loose tiles in a sidewalk or in a bridge strut. We may be using it for charging, et cetera. So it is going to be incredibly important to make sure we know what we're doing with this data, how we're going to be using this data, and how we're going to be protecting this data. That becomes infinitely more important as we use that data to deploy resources more efficiently. That is what that's about. So excited to see how we work out the societal challenges and also that in order to be able to deploy these incredible technologies that are being dreamed of right now. Thank you.
Stay tuned for the 6G webinar that we'll be doing. And John, take us home.
Yeah, just real quick. I think the transportation sector in mobile edge computing and sensors and being able to have real-time traffic management to minimize the congestion and take carbon emissions out of the atmosphere by that technology. So that I'm real excited to see that come to fruition in the CETA VX proceeding at the commission. Was talking about the smart vehicle. That's just one example of spectrum that's being made available to bring this to fruition. So
great. Well, thank you all so much. I know we ran a little over. I just wanted to give everyone that opportunity. Thank you all so much for joining us, and everyone have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.